Keep on running because the winner don't quit on themselves.
Atlantic Street Center has been serving the children, youth, and families of the Seattle-King County area since 1910. We partner with families and communities to raise healthy, successful children and youth through services including counseling, early learning, youth development, domestic violence, and education support for school-aged children. Committed to serving the African-American community, Atlantic Street Center provides services and support for all marginalized people. Learn more at AtlanticStreetCenter.org.
Join Rainier Avenue Radio from 5 to midnight for Sunday evening sound sessions. Jazz from the Cabinets from Big Poppy.
That's right. It's time once again for Jazz from the Cabinets with Big Poppy.
Sergio LaCour's Love.
Sergio's Love Lines with Sergio LaCour. Go to the phone line. Tell her who we talking to.
Sage Prince and Just My Opinion.
This is Sage, and that's just about going to do it for the first half of Just My Opinion.
K-Fox Night Beat with Nasty Ness Rodriguez.
The beat of the Fox. K-Fox Night Beat, Nasty Ness.
You know what? You're going to listen from 5 to midnight. Just turn it on and don't stop. DJ Alibaba. The Underground Surround Sound Star Time with Paul Pearson.
Thanks for tuning in. My name is Paul Pearson.
Sunday evening sound sessions on Rainier Avenue Radio. Trust me, you'll be listening the entire time from 5 to mid Sunday evening. Your sound session on Rainier Avenue Radio.
You probably have questions about COVID vaccines. Here are some answers about how they're being made.
How are COVID vaccines being produced faster?
Usually, vaccine testing and production are separate steps. But because of the pandemic, vaccines are being developed on parallel tracks. So both steps are happening just at the same time.
How are the vaccines being tested?
Right now, several different COVID vaccines are in testing. Each go through multiple clinical trials with up to thousands of volunteers.
How do vaccines get approved?
Not all COVID vaccine versions will make it to the final stages of testing and approval. Produced vaccines that do not pass clinical trials will be destroyed. But for those that do pass, a team of medical experts will examine test results and possible side effects. If the vaccine is effective and safe, it gets approved and gets to you. Go to covidvaccinewa.org to learn more. A message from the state of Washington.
This is Paul Pearson, host of Star Time. And when I'm not translating the lyrics of Boogie Oogie Oogie for bored Europeans, I'm listening to Rainier Avenue Radio.world.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to the show. I'm your girl, Cream Bree, here with Robyn T, and this is Clean Greens Living Live, broadcasting from Rainier Avenue Radio. Welcome.
Hi, everybody. Hi, welcome to the show. Hello, Queen Bree. We are coming to you from Seattle, Washington. That is also unceded Duwamish Territory Indigenous land. We have original theme music here created by Cuddy Fresh, aka Carrie Williams. We do have an amazing show lined up today. Quick reminder that our Farm CSA sign-up boxes are still available to get on board there. And you can also find out information about volunteering at our website. And I know Queen Bree has some announcements today from Rainier Avenue Radio and all the show details. So what you got, Queen Bree?
Hey, I also got a farm update too. So This Saturday, we will be starting the seeding process to get our CSAs ready and rolling. So this Saturday, they'll be meeting, they'll be planting and starting to grow the vegetables. How exciting. Also, we have some announcements. Don't forget to check out other shows on Rainier Avenue Radio, where we all month will be celebrating Women's History. And this Friday, we have boys football, Eastside Catholic at Rainier Beach at 7 p.m. And then Saturday, Nathan Hill and Franklin, whoop, whoop, my alma mater, Saturday at 6. So go Franklin boys, okay? So, and all the other boys too. Sorry, just have to give my old school a shout out. All right, so we have Heather Day here from CAJG. Sorry, I keep getting those mixed up. And we want to bring her early because we're going to be talking about Women's History Month, and she has someone special that she wants to talk about. Heather Day has been the director. Heather has been the director of Community Alliance for Global Justice since 2006. She co-founded CAGJ in 2001 with others who helped organize the 1999 World Trade Organization protest. And they were inspired to build a membership based on multi-sectoral organizations for global justice in Seattle. She learned how to be an organizer through working with Committee in Solidarity with the people of El Salvador. She is mom of Henry, who is almost 8, and studied politics and social movement at Evergreen State College and UW. So welcome, Heather, to our show. I see your note where you said I had it right the first time. I always get nervous saying those.
It's the worst, most impossible acronym ever. So you did great. I was like, oh my gosh, she got it right.
Yay. Okay, so Heather, it's Women's History Month. Last week we talked about I was about to say Under a Day. No, she played Billie Holiday in the movie. She did so good. She channeled her inner Billie Holiday. That's why she was on my mind. But we talked about Billie Holiday last week when we talked about her oh my God, Poison Fruit, was it called?
Strange Fruit
song that she was known for. So we talked about her contribution to the work of this world of making sure that human rights was made available for people through song. A lot of times people think that because they're not out there protesting that their work is not being heard, but you can protest through music, through art, through words, through posts. So this week we want to talk about, I want you to say her name. We've been practicing her last name for the longest. I think Robyn got it right. I'm still working on it. So can you say her name for us, please?
Berta Cáceres.
We said it right.
Yeah. We've been practicing. Yes. Tell us about Berta. It's an amazing person and a bit of a tragedy. So I would love to have an open with honoring Berta. So
when you asked me who I might want to honor, my mind went to her right away because it's both the anniversary of her death and her birthday this past week. Berta Cáceres was an indigenous Honduran activist who led a multi-year struggle against a major dam project in Honduras on behalf of indigenous peoples throughout Honduras and the Lenca people. She was of the Lenca peoples. And they were protesting the dam because it threatened to destroy their traditional way of life and livelihoods due to their farmland and homeland being flooded and destroying a river that is sacred to them. Now this is where I might mispronounce it, but it's the Gualcerque River, I think is how you pronounce it. So they were worried about, their food, their water, medicine for thousands of Lenca people being cut off. And they also were protesting it because they have the companies and the Honduran government had a legal responsibility to consult them and didn't. So they were protesting that. And it became this protracted struggle during which many people were intimidated, jailed, protesters were shot at multiple times, injured, and many were killed, including ultimately her. The struggle began in 2006 against the dam. There was the coup in 2009, which exacerbated the problem. We can talk a little bit more about that. And some other important landmarks in the struggle, but she was assassinated on March 2nd, 2016, when she was only 44 years old.
That is so wild. For me, it's wild because I'm like, you think that some of this stuff is like history, like people being assassinated is history, but people are literally still being assassinated and for protecting human rights and human ways of living. Yeah. Like, I was really like dumbfounded on that. You know when you're doing the work, but then when you're not doing the work, it's like, what?
Yeah.
And to know that a lot of the times the U.S. has involvement in it is absolutely wild.
Yeah, so often the U.S. has involvement. Yeah, and in this case, I mean, so the coup in Honduras was, I think, the very first act that Obama took. I mean, it was devastating, right? Like, it was such an amazing thing to elect President Obama, but it was one of the very first acts of his presidency. Within days, the Obama administration supported the coup of a democratically elected leader. Mel Zelaya is his name. And, Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State. And Berta Cáceres was interviewed a few years after the coup and specifically named Hillary Clinton as being responsible for legitimizing that coup government and for exacerbating what were already very violent conditions for activists, environmental activists in particular in Honduras. And then, and she knew by that point that that her life was on the line. It was absolutely clear that, she had received death threats. She knew she was on assassination lists. I mean, it was, horrifying. I can't imagine the bravery it took for her to continue struggling, after all of that. And she received the Goldman Environmental Prize in 2015, which partly, was awarded as an effort to literally save her life, to shine a brighter light on what she and the indigenous people struggle was there, to try to prevent her from being assassinated. I mean, it was just so well known that her life was at risk. Folks, I had the huge honor of meeting her. And I mean, I think of her, it touched me personally because we organized an event with her just a few months before in Seattle. She came here, and there's a brilliant documentary that I can't recommend enough called Resistencia, the Fight for the Aguan Valley. And I can send you a link. But we did a screening of that with another woman, Miriam Miranda, whose organization is actually a Black Honduran activist. And her organization won the Food Sovereignty Prize that year, which the U.S. Food Sovereignty Alliance and I am part of awarding. I've been helping organize that. And so we hosted the two of them, which was just such a huge honor to meet both of them. And Miriam Miranda's life is on the line. I mean, she knows that she's at threat of being assassinated for her work currently in Honduras. So, I mean, these are activists continuing the struggle, and, we really need to do everything we can to support them.
Right. I hope we can talk more about supporting them because they really do put their lives on the line. And it's almost like a really tragic through line of so many of the people we've been highlighting on the show for Black History Month and Women's History Month have not been protected and lost their lives for their work. So,
and I just want to say that the U.S. government's role that you mentioned is so a through line too, right? And not in all over the world. And this isn't a very, very unusual case because generally there's impunity. Like, people get assassinated and harassed and tortured and there's no justice. But this case, because Berta Cáceres she was internationally known. So when she was killed, there was a lot of attention on it. And so 8 people have been brought to justice, and at least 3, or if not more of them, were trained in the U.S. at the School of the Americas at Fort Benning in Georgia. And her family and the movement is still struggling to bring, because they know that the authors of the crime, like, they brought the 8 people who are directly responsible, but they know that the authors of the crime are still at large, and they're trying to go further in that struggle for justice.
Well, like the good saying goes, it is so sad to lose these people, but you can kill the revolutionary, but you can't kill the revolution. That's right. We will continue to fight, and we will continue to go, and just know that sometimes it does come with maybe dying for the cause. Yeah. But where I get it is like, I'd rather die for the cause than my children die for the cause. And that's sometimes as women, we have to take that chance. And so today we want to honor her and her work, and we want to support the people that are still fighting the good fight there. So when she shares a link with Heather, shares a link with us, we'll share the link on our social media so you guys can continue to do the education yourselves. So thank you for giving us that woman's history. She is definitely someone we need to be honoring and uplifting and talking more about.
Yes, exactly. And learning more about. And then, Heather, what is your current role in the food sovereignty movement, and what are you most passionate about right now?
So my organization is Seattle-based Community Alliance for Global Justice. And like you said, we came out of the protests against the 1999 World Trade Organization protests. And for the last 15 years, we've been focusing on this struggle for food sovereignty and supporting the food sovereignty movement, which is basically, Clean Greens is doing the work. It's about democratizing the food system and pulling the power of the food system away from giant corporations and putting it into the hands of producers and eaters, but especially food producers. And I'm really proud that CAGJ does that work, not just by working in solidarity with organizations like Clean Greens and amplifying the really important food sovereignty work that happens in our state, but also by helping form alliances. So we're co-founder and really active in the U.S. Food Sovereignty Alliance. We're part of the National Family Farm Coalition. We're one of the only groups in the Western states that's involved. That they're linked to the global movement of peasants called La Via Campesina. They're a member. We're a member, I should say. And then I'm probably most proud of our work with the African food sovereignty movement. We launched a campaign also about 15 years ago called Auger Watch that is trying to hold the Gates Foundation accountable for pushing chemically based agribusiness model of agriculture onto the African continent. And through that have become a member of the Alliance for Food Sovereignty in Africa.
I seen, we were talking about Bill Gates, and I seen a book, and I was just like, how does he think he knows everything to have his hands in so many things? So can you just explain, I know we talked about it before, but just to recap, can you recap people on what it is that is going on with Bill Gates and the African virus?
Yeah, so it's more and more complex because he is just megalomaniac. He is so, like you said, like we're starting to talk about it like an octopus, or there's this labyrinth of influence that's more and more troubling, really, in terms of the implications for democracy. But so most people know the Gates Foundation's work in medicine, and some, especially because we have local leaders in the fight around education and against standardized testing that the Gates Foundation has been behind. But they also got involved in agriculture and about 15 years ago, and of promoting a quote unquote new green revolution in Africa. And that comes out of, that term comes out of the 60s. Green revolution, was primarily carried out in Mexico and other countries in Latin America, but especially well known in Asia and especially India. And it was basically bringing the heavy use of fertilizers and different technologies to make it so people could grow more food. But in the meantime, that style of agriculture and approach to the land damages the land, damages the people doing the work, leads to huger and huger farms. So small scale farmers get pushed off the land. So the Green Revolution is hailed as a success by its supporters for having fed so many millions of hungry people. But if you look at it more closely, you see that as many people who perhaps benefited from growing more crops were pushed off the land. So when the Gates Foundation was holding it up as a model to follow in Africa, we immediately red flags went up, and we were just like, wait a second, what are you doing? And they talk a very good talk, and it's hard to understand, so we had to do a lot of research and dig. But one of the first signs that to us there was a real problem was that they hired a former vice president of the global agribusiness and chemical corporation, Monsanto, to head up their program at the Gates Foundation. So that was just a signal that they're going to be relying on the corporate agribusiness model and pushing that onto the continent, and that's exactly what they've done. So we want to support small scale sustainable farming, same kind of work that Clean Greens does on the African continent. That is the majority of people are fed through that style, that method of farming. It needs support. There is a lot of hunger, but instead, all these corporations are honestly expanding because they're losing markets in the rest of the world, and they see Africa as another, and once again, we're seeing colonialism and imperialism and this effort to extract from the African continent. And there's a huge fight back against that, and for many good reasons.
I'm so curious, because don't we know now that form of agriculture depletes the soil and loses the lifetime of literally how much usable soil we have on this planet, and that big ag model isn't long-term sustainable? And don't we know also now that it actually doesn't create higher yields when you pollute? So how do they continue to justify doing this work? I mean, is it just for that bottom line? Like, okay, it's just for these big corporations. It doesn't matter if we ruin the land, and it doesn't matter if actually people aren't really served in the long run.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
do they ever address that, or they just try to wash it over?
They address it, but and again, you have to really there's so many great organizations on the continent that are doing analysis of this, to better be able to break apart what they say they're doing, what they're actually doing. But they say there were shortcomings to the original Green Revolution, that they're not repeating those mistakes. It is much more focused on GMOs and genetically modifying the staple crops of Africa, which wasn't as central to the original Green Revolution. There's just a lot of other approaches that are because of new technologies that they're developing, and seemingly more every day. But ultimately, it is still based on a package that is, one, chemical-based fertilizers, and two, seeds that have to be purchased. There are programs where they're donating them now, but ultimately, they aren't relying on farmers' own knowledge and relearning knowledge that's been lost. I mean, that work is happening on the continent too, and needs to be done because of histories of colonialism as well. But there's so many ways that farmers can be reliant on themselves and on the resources that are available to them. And yes, we have to address drought, and there's other systemic problems, climatic impacts that are happening, but there are many ways of doing that using agroecological or sustainable approaches, and not these corporate profit-driven processes. And it's super problematic, and just it's really why we have a campaign focused on it, and that we're collaborating with more and more organizations around the world, including in the US, to try to change their course. But we believe that they are just the Gates Foundation and Bill Gates are so locked into this mindset that technology can solve all problems, and they don't see agroecology as technologically driven, which is, it's a science, but it's also a movement and a practice, but it deserves to be the focus of all agricultural work, because it is the most sustainable, and ultimately is what will be resilient enough to withstand climate change. So we haven't been able to get through to them. We don't have a lot of hope that we will, honestly. They're so tech driven. Now they're pursuing all these other it's all about data mining now. So that's their new thing.
It's so sad that people, the reason why they can get away with that is because, one, not a lot of people are educated on it. And then you throw a bunch of money and fear, and people just ignore all the cons and just look at some of the pros that they're giving, because now they're operating in fear and they're looking at money. So I'm happy that you guys are out there bringing awareness, and we will be there to support you guys any way we can, because I feel like the more we get out there and educate people about things that are going on, this stuff will, and people don't believe it, but the more you know and the more you fight, the more we can stop this together as a whole. Yeah. But the more we're distracted, and the more we're distracted by money and all this glitz and glam, they're going to take over. So I'm really happy that you guys are out here educating us, and we want to join the fight too.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thanks for the solidarity. And you're doing the work, being at Clean Greens and educating. I mean, it's the same work, you're raising awareness. So really, really appreciate, I'm so excited to see, your leadership at Clean Greens. It's really always been an important partner of CAGJ, and have so much love and respect for Reverend Jeffries and Lottie. Loved her so much. So thanks for carrying on that work.
No problem. So I see you have a son who's 8 years old, almost 8. When is his birthday?
Sunday on Pi Day.
Party time. How's it going for you with you continuing this fight and being like, you're a superhero right now? Let's uplift you for Women's History as well. You're out here fighting for social justice, and you are at home Zooming it. So how is that going for you?
Well, I'm very fortunate because my husband can work part-time. He's actually works for a foraging company, so he's in the food work too. But so major props to my partner for doing most of the schooling with our son. I'm with my son one day. I do it one day a week, and instead of trying to do Zoom school, we don't do much, but mostly we cook, we bake. Or did you want to be on the show?
Hi, son.
Here's Henry.
Special guest.
Hi, happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
So we have a lot of fun on Mondays doing some cooking projects. And actually, we planted seedlings. We planted seeds together for our garden. So we do some garden stuff together.
That is fun. We did that this weekend with the farm. I am curious on what you're cooking from your husband's foraging. What is on the menu from the world of foraging right now?
Nettles. Nettles are coming in. They're ridiculously high in nutrients, like a zillion times more healthy than kale, for example. And they grow wild. We live near Schmitz Park in West Seattle, and Henry and his friend went to with Henry's dad, with my partner Travis, to harvest nettles yesterday, but they ended up having more fun playing in the creek. But and you have to be very careful, right? Because they can sting you. Yeah. Your friend got zapped. Yeah. But you can make a delicious soup with them, with potatoes. That's something that my husband loves to make with them. And you can make smoothie. I mean, you can make all sorts of stuff with nettles, but yeah. And then mostly we get mushrooms, which is just such a treat. And wild huckleberries, which to me, I'm like, people go in the mountains and harvest huckleberries and we get to eat them. Like, that's gold to me. There's nothing more special.
I agree. I love that. I love getting the local, like, other berries that are just wild. Like, I realized we could eat salal berries and stuff. So I was just like so excited when I learned of that, because I was like, those have just been there this whole time. And they used to mash them up and dry them and almost like a fruit leather. And I'm like, wait, there's nutrients there,
Yeah,
so I think that's
from indigenous folks, right?
Yeah, that stuff is super cool. So we do have some links to find you on Facebook at CAGJ Seattle, Twitter the same, Instagram the same at CAGJ Seattle. And are there, I think we've got about a minute or two, if you want to leave us with any final things we can do to support or positive uplifting. What's good news?
Thanks for sharing your website. Yeah, we also Augur Watch, the campaign focused on the Gates Foundation's role, has its own at Augur Watch on Twitter, and has its own Facebook account too, so you can follow us there, not Instagram. But yeah, we do programming all year long. We'll have a summer school focused on leadership development and food sovereignty this summer that's free. We're always looking for volunteers. We take interns at any time. So there's lots of ways to get involved, and that's membership. We're a membership-based organization. You can also just become a member either by donating or just by filling out our membership card. And that's what we hope folks will do to support us. So really appreciate the invitation and the opportunity to honor Bertha. Thank you.
Well, thank you for joining us, and thank you, Henry, for joining us. Up next is Traffic Jam, and you are watching Clean Greens Living on Rainier Avenue Radio. Thanks for joining, everyone. Happy birthday.
Updated weekly at rainieravenueradio.world.